Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Subhanallah wa alhamdulillah. La ilaha illallah. Wallahu akbar. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Assalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the R2F show. And today's topic is going to be about rejoining the Ummah, or how to rejoin the Ummah, some advice, some words of wisdom, some lessons from transitioning from being in a cult to rejoining the main protected Muslim Ummah. And so we're going to talk about that. Please, in both chats, whether you're on Zoom or on YouTube, have some questions prepared. It's a good time to actually ask questions for anybody that's in that stage, especially of trying to figure out how to leave the cult and how to join the Ummah. So ask your questions. We're gonna start getting a little bit more streamlined with our shows. So our show is going to be approximately 45 minutes long, and we're going to leave the last 15 minutes for questions. So if you want us to reach our whole half hour or a whole hour show, have questions ready for that last 15 minutes, inshallah. So I'm just going to open up with, before we get into advice about how to join the Ummah, how to connect with the Ummah, how to leave the cult and make that transition. I first want to talk about some of the benefits of the Ummah, Islamically. So in the cult, you probably heard a lot of hadiths about the Ummah, right? And a lot of warnings and different things like don't leave the Ummah, there's protection in the Ummah, and all these different things that were used out of context to actually keep you inside the cult, because they use the word Ummah to refer to their special little community. However, whenever you see the word Ummah used in the hadith, in Islam, is talking about the big body consensus, the majority of Muslims in the world. That is the Ummah of Rasul Sallallahu. This is where you have the hadiths where Rasul Sallallahu is constantly referring to my Ummah, my Ummah, my Ummah. This is who he's referring to. He's not referring to a specific group. He's not referring to some specific acronym or some specific ism, whether it's Sufism, Salafism, all these different groups that are out there. He's talking about the main body of Muslims, not any sect, not any special organization. So when you look at these hadiths again, keep that in mind, because this is what you're joining. Okay. So this hadith was narrated in the compilation by Imam Dawood, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, those who came before you of the people of the book split into 72 sects, and this Ummah will split into 73 sects, 72 in hell and 1 in paradise. And then one of the narrations, the Sahaba asked, well, how do we know? And he said, that is the Jama'ah, or the community, or the main body of Muslims. Okay, not a special little group where you have billions of Muslims that are considered Ummah, and then a little group of maybe a few hundred or a few thousand, right? Or even tens of thousands. It's not the main body of the Ummah. Okay, we got billions of Muslims around the world. That is the Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah. And the term Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah is the community of Muslims that follow the Sunnah and follow the Jama'ah, the community, the consensus of Muslims, the Jama'ah. Okay,
because didn't the Prophet ﷺ say that my ummah would not upon falsehood? So you have to so you have to take that into account. And growing up, so Jafar just mentioned the hadith where he says the majority that was growing up in the Jamaat that was cut off, right? The second half of that was cut off. It was just about how 72 is going to be wrong and then 1 will be correctly guided, and that was the talking points growing up. Was like, okay, well, this is why we're special, right? This is why we're supposed to be better than every other Muslim, because we are that one rightfully guided Jamaat that's going to go to heaven, and everybody else is going to hell. So that's one of the things you have to unlearn is that you're not special.
Yeah.
You are, in the grand scheme of things, a Muslim, alhamdulillah. But especially in the Ummah, no, everyone's special in the Ummah. All right. You don't stand out above the rest. And so unlearning all the things that you're taught, which is really hard to do because this has been ingrained in you since you were a kid, especially if you're older in the Jamaat. This has been your whole life, right? So it takes a lot of time, but you have to go through unlearning all that stuff because you'll say something out loud and people will look at you crazy. I'm like, brother, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you have to unlearn it because I mean it happens. It happens because in reality, like as much as you think you don't really know anything because the basics aren't there yet. So you have to go about learning your religion as a whole, which is hard to do. But it's fun to do though.
Yep. And when you look at all those hadiths again, your eyes will be just like wide open, and you'll be blown away with the correct context of the hadith. And like in the same hadith that I just read, there's another version of it in Tirmidhi where we talked about the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Well, how do we know that? Well, the first hadith referred to the Jama'ah, the community, the main body of Muslims. In this hadith, Rasul said the same thing about there's going to be 73 sects and only one's going to be saved. And they asked, well, how do we know which one's saved? He said, those who follow that which I and my companions follow, right? That's the Quran and the Sunnah, in accordance to the Salaf, the righteous predecessors. And of course, for those that are like super Salafis, goofy Sufi, don't mix it up with like these extreme Salafi groups because you guys are closer to them than you actually think, as far as like, the cultism and extremism and that sort. But there should be no shame in, I remember I went through a phase where when you hear stuff like Quran and Sunnah, or you hear follow the Salaf or the righteous predecessors, it gives you a little cringe because you're ingrained like, oh, that's a Salafi. We can't listen to them. That's, but that's not, you got to get these things out of your system because this is how, when you know that you're following Rasul Sallam and his companions, the first 3 generations, and you're with the main body of Muslims, and you're not doing anything extreme as far as like these extreme acts of so-called worship, these extreme acts of innovation, or these extreme acts of labeling every other group as kafirs and all these different things, then you're on the right track. And the last hadith that I'll mention before we get into some of the advice is, we all know about Kawthar. We all know about going to the cistern. Inshallah, we will all be there drinking from the hand of Rasul Sallam. And this is like before we get into paradise, where we drink and we never get thirsty again. And Rasul Sallam is going to be the one giving out the drinks. Inshallah, we're all there. But there's going to be a scene there, and hopefully, may Allah protect us from being a part of this group, as that some will come to drink from the cistern, from Rasul Sallam, and the angels will stop them. Okay. And Rasul Sallam, and this is the thing, like Rasul Sallam cared about his ummah more than anything else in this world. He made so many du'as for his ummah, right? Rasul Sallam recognized like this person is a Muslim, right? He'll recognize him as a Muslim, and he'll say, these are my people, my ummah, that's my ummah, that's my ummah. And the angels will inform him that they will say, you do not know what they introduced / innovated after you were gone. So then Rasul Sallam, after he's like saying, that's my ummah, my ummah, my ummah, he'll say, away, like get away, away with those who change the religion after I'm gone. So I just wanted to end with that, especially from the backgrounds that we come from, where there's so much innovation, there's so much just making things up, that when we join the Ummah, we protect ourselves from that. So just keep that in mind, that this is where you're going to. You're going to the protection. You're going to achieve all these blessings. This is what we want when we join the Ummah. So with that, we will get right into some of the things that were mentioned. Let me pull my list.
I got you. Okay. All right. Oh, wait, no, my phone. Thank you.
Oh, hold on. I got you.
You got it.
I got it on my phone. So the first thing that was mentioned as an advice when you're thinking about getting, and these are in any particular order, so we're just going to go right down the list. And if you have any ideas or other benefits, type them in the chat, please. The first one is to bring a benefit to the people.
Yep.
And this is an important one because, excuse me, And it ties into another one. I'll just mention it now, with learning from the Sirah.
Yep.
So if you look at like everything that alhamdulillah, Allah provided us like a perfect example in the life for Rasulullah for anything that we face. And if you look at the position that you're in, or that we were in, that we're all in at one point, is that you're coming from a cult, right? You're coming from deviant beliefs, a deviant community, a community that was upon falsehood, and you're trying to join the Muslim community. You can directly look at Sahabas during the time of Rasulullah, especially the ones that actually fought against Rasulullah, right? You have Abu Sufyan, you have Khalid bin Walid, you have Amr bin As, and all these great Sahabi that they actually fought against Rasulullah. And then there came a point, it was like, oh, they're right. They're upon right. They're right. I got to join that community. So everybody's different, and you can look at different Sahabas and their stories and which one you identify with and which one you can take examples from, but they all have their unique story of coming to the Ummah. But what did they do when they joined the Ummah? The biggest example we probably could think of is Khalid bin Walid.
Yep.
Right? Look at the conquest. He brought a benefit to the Ummah. He didn't go to the Ummah and say, hey, what can y'all do for me?
Yeah.
How much money can I get from y'all for my rent? What are you gonna do for me? He came, he was humble, and he provided a benefit to the Ummah. Mm-hmm. So bring your skills, bring your experience. Like for instance, if you're in a cult and your thing was organizing basketball tournaments, you can go join a local community and start organizing basketball tournaments.
Yep.
And they'll love you for it.
Mm-hmm.
The Ummah has the same needs as any other community, just on a larger scale, and they'll be more grateful for it. You'll get more blessings from Allah because you're doing it upon truthfulness and on the right path. And so just be aware. Just try to bring something to the Ummah, and you will always get more in return than you actually put in.
Yep.
So just keep that in mind.
Yep. Check your ego at the door. Whenever you leave a Jamaat, like just check out the door. And listen, it's like Jafar said, it doesn't have to be monetary or like, because there's plenty of things that like if you were in the Jamaat and you're good at making food, alhamdulillah, there's plenty of mosques that do like potlucks on Fridays or Saturdays. Go there during that time. That's how you can ingratiate yourself with this community, right? Because you don't know these people yet, but hey, listen, like this is, I bought food here. These are like my kids, like even just bring your kids to the event, like or to Ummah, right? Saying hi to folks. Don't be afraid to give people salams, because and this is some irrational fear folks have, where it's like, oh well, they're gonna look at me a certain way. I promise you, they're not. Majority of the Muslims, I don't care how racist they may have been, they return salams. All right.
Yeah.
So don't be just salams, brother, salams, sister. Like they'll be nice to you, because that's generally how it works in the Ummah. Like they're not looking at you like they're those Team Away folks. That's not how it works. They probably don't know you. So like,
well, and then on that point, one thing I wanted to mention is to also be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't think that, okay, I'm leaving TMOA, which has all sorts of problems. Well, without even talking about the shirk and the bid'ah and the oppression and all this different stuff, there's just natural problems or issues that exist in any community.
Yeah.
Political stuff, family stuff, a little bit of racism, and these types of things. Don't be surprised when you see that type of stuff in other Muslim communities. They exist everywhere. However, it's not going to be on the scale within the tiny little cult that you came from, right? And within, and it really depends on where you're from, what your location is, because some people have different access. Like some people could live out in the boonies and there's no local masjid except for hours away. Some could be in like a place like, down in Texas where there's just masjids everywhere and all types of communities. So, just be aware that you're still going to run into some kind of, most likely some kind of little political different things here and there. But in general, those things are really minor on the scale of things, especially compared to the cult background you come from.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
And if you happen to like stumble upon a community that, is not doing things properly, then don't be discouraged. All right. Because I promise you, if that community isn't rightfully guided, there is a million more. All right. So they could be just like how you were. But don't be discouraged. Like, okay, well, now I'm just gonna not be Muslim anymore because I've had bad experiences in a row. No, there is other communities out there. I promise you. Like, there's in Richmond, we have like 7. There is the Arab community. There's the Pakistanis. There's the Ethiopians. There's the Nigerians. Like, so there's African Americans. So there's plenty of communities you can go to, and one of them you'll find, because if every Muslim around you is wrong, then you might just move there.
And then, like, when you do make that connection, identify a community that you want to try to get yourself and your family into, put yourself out there.
Yep.
Don't, I know people that have, they complain like, oh, I've tried to join this Jamaat. Like, they come in with the same mindset that they have inside of the cult, right? Where they think like there's like a pecking order and there's certain little things. It's like, no, it's not out. If you can generally just go to the local masjid and say, hey, I want to volunteer for the cooking community, or I want to help organize the Eid, or whatever you want to do, put yourself out there. And the Ummah, generally, for the most part, vast majority, like, you'll find maybe little issues here and there, but you're going to be accepted. You're going to be welcomed. You're going to be honored. You're going to have all sorts of resources available to you. And also, really pay attention to this point. In a lot of cases, for especially those that still live locally near their cult that they left, you will find that these communities are the same communities that provide services to your cult
already. Yep.
Right. Your kids go to school there, or the cult's kids go to school there. They bury your dead when you don't allow them to be buried on your properties. When your people need assistance or rent assistance or all these different things, they can't go to your cult leaders because they're hiding all the money, but they go to these local communities. So those services are there for you, but now you're actually going to be a part of the group that's actually providing those services. So don't be afraid of that. Let's see. Okay, so we got to talk about like the elitism, the superiority complex that you really have to shed before you actually take these steps towards another community. I think, Amr, you hit it the best one.
Yes.
So I want you to talk about that.
Check your egos at the door. I can't stress this enough. You're gonna come to find out that you aren't the smartest person in the room, and that's okay. That's actually a good thing. You should actually want to not be the smartest person in the room, because then you're able to learn, right? And when you go and your only knowledge you can claim to have is, oh, my former sheikh was the Mujaddid of the century, blah, 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 blah. And all of that's false, right? So the information that you presume to have is all wrong, right? One of the things that I'll recommend, which is a tremendous benefit for anyone, because we're in the age now of the internet, go on YouTube, right? There is a 104-part series by Yasser Khadi on the Seerah of the Prophet Muhammad. That series is excellent. He covers multiple different angles. He covers like different aspects, the timelines, back and forth. Like, he does an extensive job covering that. Like, he might have other issues, right? But that Seerah, perfect, right? So if you take the time, some episodes are an hour, some are 45 minutes, but he goes into that, and that's really the basis, I feel like, for most people, because his English is excellent, right? The last Pakistani you guys know wasn't the best English, but this person's English is excellent, all right? So I would recommend that for a lot of folks, and you can really see the transition and how the life of the Prophet kind of similarly mirrors yours, right? Because the Jahiliyyah Arabs, right, they were upon falsehood, right? And one of the things that people don't know is the Jahiliyyah Arabs, they believed in Allah, right? But they had other things associated with Allah. They had the idols, Lat Uzza, and all the stuff, and not. But they still believe in Allah. So you still believe in Allah, obviously, because you're Muslim. But besides that, you also had Shaji there as like a mirror to that as well. So sure, you believe in Allah, but also you had other things with him. So that kind of goes hand in hand. Okay, so now I'm getting away from that and learning my religion from the start, right? And basically, at this point, you are a new Muslim, so it's good for you. But don't carry, like, if you are some administration in the Jamaat, I promise you, the larger Muslim Ummah is not going to know, oh, that's the Honorable K2 Saab. They're not going to know you. You're not that, like, outside of your circle, you're not that well known. You could be super important, but in the real world, they're not going to care who you are, right? So
Yeah.
leave your ego at the door. Be willing to learn, take advice, and be willing to humble yourself, because at the end of the day, like, you're not bigger or better than anyone. We don't have like special parking for you. It's not how it works.
Yeah, and you got to really, even though there's things that, you know, they're so ingrained in us, you know, depending on how long you've been involved in your cult, there's some things that, even though you recognize are faults, are still ingrained in you, and you still act on it, not even knowingly. See, even like during the Amr mentioned the Sirah, there was, even after the Sahaba took the Shahada, they still had some stuff in them from the Jahiliyyah, you know, ignorance, the tribalism, and they would pop up now and then, and Rasul would have to check them, and these sorts of things. They still existed, right? Even though they were on the right path. So like, you joining the right path, you still are going to carry some of the things that you believed while you're in a cult. So you may go to another masjid and not even knowingly think that you're better than them, because that's what you're taught. You were taught that you were the saved community. All these people were off it. All these people were ignorant. They're Wahhabis and, you know, government spies and Zionist pigs and all these different things. This is what you were taught for years. So without even knowing it, you could walk into a room and have this, you know, ego or aura about you, where people will feel like this guy thinks he's better than us.
Yeah, like,
so you really have to, you really have to like leave that alone. Like Amr said, humble yourself, and no one's gonna embarrass you, right?
Yeah.
No one's like, oh, this guy's from the cult. Hey guys, he's from that cult. Yeah. It's not gonna happen. You know,
once again, you aren't that important. That's I cannot emphasize this enough. You do not matter to these people, because I was reading a story, right? And the story was talking about how every person is their own main character, right? So you are your own main character, and you have this sense of important, and there's people in your story who you also deem important, but to someone else who doesn't know you, that person walking off the street, they don't know who you are. But to them, they're inside of their own story, so they're their own main character. So you don't matter to that person, right? But they're not going out their way to just like, okay, well, F him. That doesn't happen. That's just not how it works, especially Muslims. Like, I've been to a lot of the different mosques all over the world, and they're nice everywhere. So
for real, that's the truth. And we'll use this as an opportunity to plug our 2000, or we'll say 1444 Ummah trip coming up at the end of December, inshallah. Contact me or anybody in R2F if you want information, if you're interested in going. We have a handful of people already committed that's already bought tickets, and so inshallah we make it there. May Allah accept it from us. So we want as many people as possible to come, even if you're from TMOA. We don't have to talk we won't talk shop on the trip, right? But I want to connect that what he just said is, when you actually join the Ummah, right? We talk about this air, like this, like you're not important. But then when you really like travel and you interact with other Muslims outside the context of your cult, and you see the diversity, and you see the unity, and you see how insignificant your actual cult is, then when you're like, no, I'm part of this Ummah, then you actually really feel important, and it's under the right context. Because you're like, I'm part of the Ummah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the best place that can ever occur is when you go to Mecca and Medina. You will go there, and it will put everything into perspective for you, right? When you're, inshallah, making tawaf, and you look and you see an old man, right? You know, I'm 40 years old, and I see an old man, this may be like 50, 60, maybe, carrying his mother on his back, making tawaf. And I'm like, man, I couldn't even carry my kid around. Like, what, you know? Then you see you look down, you see a man with no legs on like a little makeshift skateboard doing their tawaf. Right. And so like, and then you're like, it really puts things into perspective. I'll just say that. And it really connects you to what, when Rasul uses the word ummah, community, because everybody's there. Everybody, like, you see, they don't know you from nothing. They look at you and you feel the love that they have, and you love them. Like you can't even explain it. So really connect, and you can experience the same thing here locally. And one thing I wanted to touch on when was Amr mentioned Yasser Qadi's series was that I mentioned how not everybody is in an area where there's like a vibrant, flourishing community that they can connect with, right? You might be in an area where like, oh, the Bosnians set up their masjid over down the street, and they don't really let nobody else go in there, or they don't really welcome anybody, or the Somalis got their thing going down there. Depends what you got going in the area. But one thing that you can supplement with rejoining the Ummah is also rejoining the Ummah with virtual communities.
Yep.
Right. So there's lots of ways you can connect with the Ummah virtually, whether it's attending. For me, a lot of it was attending authentic, certified classes online. You make new connections with people that are around the nation and around the world. You learn from teachers that have learned and studied all over at different universities around the world, right? So when you make that connection, you're actually connecting with the Ummah, and it forms another way that you can have this feeling of unity and community through the virtual space and through a space through education as well. So that's available as well. So you can combine these things together and really start taking those steps to being one with the Ummah.
Yep. And just to piggyback off of what Jaffer said about how when you go and see Mecca, I haven't gone there yet, but I was in Malaysia, right? I was at the National Mosque of Malaysia. It holds 15,000 folks. It was basically packed. There's folks outside. Like that's how it was during Eid, right? It was Eid al-Adha, and when I tell you, like that building was huge and it was still it was packed shoulder to shoulder still. So imagine how big the Haram is. Like imagine Masjid al-Madinah. Like so when you get to see that, right? And there isn't anyone picking you out from the crowd, right?
Right.
All that you're thinking about is, wow, this is Islam. Because you don't get to like as big as the Jamaat seem to be to you, they are so small. That one mosque in Malaysia is dwarfing that, right? I remember the Eid in South Carolina and in New York and whatever. Like, I mean, the masjid isn't even that big. Sure, it was packed, but there's like what 400 folks there. This place had thousands, and it still wasn't room. Like you were still shoulder to shoulder. Like so, it really dawned on me. It's like wow, like you really were in a fishbowl. You were in a fishbowl with a lid on it in the ocean. That's basically what happens like to you in the Jamaat. So it really is eye-opening when you get to actually see the Ummah at large, because it really is large. Like it doesn't hit you into it. Yeah.
So another thing we want to talk about is our brother Hanif J. Williams brought this up, is reconciling the identity crisis that a lot of people face upon leaving the Jamaat, or not the Jamaat, but a cult, right? And when you're in a cult, one of the techniques of a cult is they strip your identity away. Okay. Now, if you look again, all these things connect. Alhamdulillah. We didn't like we said, we don't plan this stuff, but you can see how the stuff connects when we just talk it through. When you look at the Sirah, again, we talk about the importance of learning the Sirah and how that can help you acclimate to the Ummah. You look at how Islam didn't erase the Sahaba's identity. Each Sahaba still kept their unique identity and achieved their ranks and heights in their own right, not on their own terms, but with their own personalities, right? We know that Abu Bakr was softer than Umar, right? We know that Uthman was extremely modest and shy, right? We know these things about the Sahaba, and we know Amr bin As was like a great politician and like he politically savvy. He knew these things. We knew that I forget the other Sahaba's name, but he wasn't really a fighter, but he was a poet. He knew how he had them bars, right? He knew it. That was his thing. So like, and when you're in a cult, you get stripped of that, and you're told and indoctrinated into believing that you have to act a certain way if you're going to be deemed like a holy person or a special person, right? And that usually entails, wearing the same exact clothes, speaking the same exact way. Like the cult that we were from, everybody started like imitating how the sheikh talked with his Pakistani accent. It's like, why are you talking like you don't speak English?
Why are you saying zikr and azan?
Right, exactly. So let go of that and know that you can be yourself, because a lot of people, when they leave the cult, they go to extremes with trying to like find who they are.
Yep.
You know, and you're gonna go, you're gonna, you know, some people are a little bit different than others when they leave the cult, but some go through that thing. We're like, okay, am I the person that like is into fashion, that dresses nice? Am I the person that's like into fitness? Am I the person that's into just being at the masjid and worshiping all day? Am I find yourself, you know, and don't be afraid to be yourself. As long as you are a Muslim, as long as you're on a Quran and Sunnah, you have room to entirely be yourself and still be a very good Muslim.
Yep. And it's just like Jafar said, not everyone is going to be a student of knowledge. That's just not the reality. Because if everyone's a student of knowledge, we don't have doctors, right? We don't have engineers, we don't have construction workers. Like folks do different things. Like, sure, I do the R2F show a little bit. I have an award for cooking food. This is what I do the most, right? So everyone has their strong suit. And don't be afraid to embrace that, because sure, you should always never stop learning your Islam, obviously, but you may not have the time or the mental capacity to fully develop and learn everything about Islam. That's why we have people who are hafiz, right? We have people who are muhaddith. We have folks who are excellent on history. Like, so not everyone is good at every one thing, but because the Ummah is so large, we can come together and you can find, if you get 20 folks in a room, somebody's good at this, somebody's good at this, and now you all come. That's kind of how R2F works so well, because everyone has their own individual skills and they come together to make it move, right? And so it doesn't like it. Not everyone is on the level of Jafar or Hanif or Mubarak. And some
don't mention my name in that.
But I'm just saying, like, not everyone's at different levels, and everyone has their expertise that they can bring to the table. Because I mean, if you didn't, then like that's part of what Jafar mentioned earlier about bringing something to the community or to the Ummah, is that like knowing what you're good at, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm good at. I excel at this. I'm going to do this, and that's what you should try to bring. Like, hey, look, like, oh, you guys need some like nerd related stuff. I got y'all. You guys need food. I got y'all. So I know what I'm good at, and I stick to that.
A good thing is what you mentioned is don't let how your cult try to define you be who you accept yourself as when you leave. Because you already know, like, when you're in a cult, you're dealing with a lot of different things. You're dealing with nepotism, you're dealing with favoritism, you're dealing with all types of different isms inside the cult. So like, say for instance, just use cooking as an example. You might not have been inside of those elite little circles that were like, oh, we're the Jamaat cooks, right? So like they never like put you on the board or on the committees that, you know, cook the different. We'll not get into the quality of food, but you know, there's
I was about to say, Jafar, I was about to say, anyone on that committee needs to be fired. It's just
so, but you know how it is. Like they have the little circles, they have the little, you have to be connected, and someone has to like approve of you. So like your thing might be cooking, but for some reason inside the cult, you never got to like express those interests or those skills inside the cult. Don't be afraid to leave the cult and join the Ummah and be like, listen, I cook and I throw down. I can help out during the Eid, during your weddings, whatever. You'll be accepted. And you could really, you know, pursue your interests outside of the cult that you were in. Don't let your, and here's I forgot to mention this, but this is a good point to mention it now, is whenever, so like, here's the benefit of when you actually join the Ummah and leave the cult. Inside the cult, you could have been, you know, the person that got lashed for fornication, or adultery. You're known for doing drugs in the past. And, you know, cults are like high schools, or, you know, little, you know, Mean Girls high school movies or whatever. Like you get your story, and that's who you are for the rest of your life inside the cult. When you leave the cult and join the Ummah, you can use it as an opportunity to restart, redefine yourself. You don't have to carry around that baggage of who you used to be when you rejoin the Ummah, right? You're not going to be marked like with the scarlet letter A for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So use that as an opportunity. If you wanted to be a certain type of way, again, remember, identity, find out who you want to be, know who you are, and you could pursue that on your, it's like literally like starting over, starting fresh with like a new life inside the Muslim world, and use the opportunity to, you know, let go of the bad things that you kind of been carrying around with you, and then pursuing and exploiting and showing off all the good things, not showing off as in like you're showing off, but you know, using all your skills and qualities that you know you have with you. So,
and like, I mean, we're not ever going to play suck fear upon anyone, but if you believed the seventh sultan or whatever the heck, or if you heard him say fear Allah or fear me, at that point you weren't with the Ummah, and that takes you out of the fold of Islam. So when you do join the Ummah, right, as we know, when you become Muslim, all your sins are now forgiven. So as it's like Jafar said, like that, the things you did in the past are in the past. Like when you join the Ummah, you can say the Jamaat is my Jahiliyyah days. That's basically what you can say at this point, because that was days of me being ignorant. And now you're part of the community. So take this time to learn, because you have, Jafar said, a clean slate. Because like I said earlier about how you're not important to those folks, they don't know who you are in your past. You are brother so and so. You were sister so and so. So now you can start off. It's like a brand new start. It's like Isekai. Like you start over again.
And for those of us that are parents, like the children are like a go-to if you want to find a easy way to like connect with the Ummah, right? There's always, the mosque is always doing some type of events, whether it's at the Eids or whether it's schools or after school programs. You use your children, connect your children, and then you'll connect with other children's parents, different things. Like that's what you want to do. That's another way that you can connect with the Ummah. And that we probably need to do like a whole separate show on like the psychological deprogramming that you have to go through after you leave a cult. You know, whether it's going to be with like a professional or, you know, at least like, you know, if you're going to do it personally, individually, you know, you could at least know the different stages that you go through mentally, psychologically when you leave these indoctrination systems, because that's a whole nother conversation. Because there are people that I know of that they literally have anxiety about even going into another masjid. Like they're afraid to, like literally afraid to just like, and it's a real thing. And, you know, Allah knows best where that comes from. It probably comes from like, oh, these guys aren't real Muslims, or if if you pray with them, it's not accepted, or, you know, or just the fear of just encountering change or new people. Like that's a real thing. So don't feel ashamed if that like you actually feel like nervous or scared or some kind of apprehension about like the first time you go and walk into the local masjid. That's a real thing. You know, but after you do it a few times, alhamdulillah, that really goes away. You know,
and and we're gonna have to do a show on this obviously in the future. But even though it sounds like super cliche because you hear it all the time, the first step really is accepting you're in a cult. It's the hardest thing to do, as a matter of fact. Because I'm talking to many folks who are just like, I mean, I wouldn't call it a cult. Like, no. It is a cult. Like, it was all bad. There, you can try to skate around it as much as you want to, but once you actually accept that fact, that is the first step towards recovery. All right. And it's cliche. Everyone says that for everything. No, but that's true because it works. Like once you accept it, then okay, boom. Now, and I say this to everyone. One of the biggest steps for me getting over it, because I wasn't like stuck on it. I knew it was a cult. I accepted that, but the final steps of like, you know, getting over it and like coming to terms with everything that happened was the R2F chat, alhamdulillah, right? And I say this to everyone in the chat, like this is really just a giant group therapy, right? Sure, we give da'wah and, you know, we try to help those escape, but I can't say that someone has gotten more benefit from that chat than I have. And it's a tremendous benefit that I get on the daily, just interacting with folks who, and Jafar mentioned this all the time about how the friends and the family that you leave behind in like Jahiliyyah and all this stuff, Allah places them with better friends and family who are upon the Quran and Sunnah. And that's something that I can take a law for it every day is that like I really do have a strong group and a strong community that is upon the things that I believe in, right? Upon the correct path. And it helps me get through these different things that happen. And sure, like it may not seem that, oh yeah, Amr, you're not affected by the cult. I laugh about it all the time, but it still affects me because that's like it's still a cult. Like at the end of the day, like that's still traumatic. But I'm able to work through it better because I have similar people who went through the same thing. So they're able to understand that. And that's if you can, I guess, join the R2F chat or just have more, interactions or communication with people from your cult who left also, that's great for you because having a therapist is great. And they do tremendous work, but I can promise you one thing, they're not going to know about so being a witch because she over here blew it a knot and said Shadi's name backwards 15 times. So like they're not going to understand that. So I would recommend finding folks who have left the Jamaat of Team Away and are now on the correct path because then you can talk about it. Because honestly, like if you tell it to just any Muslim, like okay, that's something I wouldn't recommend. Don't go don't go be like, yeah, listen, this is what I believe. Maybe you should leave it behind. But if you talk to people who have been there before, alhamdulillah, like that works best.
That's me. Like, hey yo, my name's Jaffer. Yeah, I was in the cult, yo.
No, I tell that to folks at work all the time. Just in conversations, like, yeah, a terrorist cult, black magic, don't worry about all that. Child marriages, No, but yeah.
So, but it's funny you mention that because in one of the book I read, I think it was a great book. It really opened me up to like that point of accepting that I'm in a cult.
Yeah.
It was written by a Caucasian brother in Canada that was basically part of some goofy Sufi cult, right? Found some sheikh or whatever, some wacky job. But he actually has a doctorate in psychology too. So then he wrote a book, and gosh, the name of the book is, I've been meaning to like do like videos, just going like chapter by chapter through it and going through the big points, because it really, you would think that this, like there's times in the book you're like, yo, he is he part of the Canada Jamaat? He has to be, because the stuff that he's describing is exactly
too accurate.
What, we went right through the same stuff. But one thing that I remember from the book, it was called Spiritual Lighthouse, I think. But I'll get it eventually, do some kind of video on it or something. But he said the most important thing you could do when you leave one of these spiritually abusive cults is to connect with people who have had the same experiences.
Yep.
He said that's like the biggest thing, whether it's a chat group, whether it's a discussion group or whatever. Excuse me. He said that's the most important thing you could do. And I see that in, like Amr said, in the R2F, just chat, because we say this all the time. We come into the room and we talk about things and it makes us cry. Then within like a month, we're talking about the same things and literally laughing and joking about like, yo, we was in a cult, yo. Like great. Talking about the same exact things. So it's very therapeutic, very therapeutic. And one thing I want to mention real quick, I'll share my screen.
Here we go.
It's just another way to connect to the Ummah, especially if you're not in a place that has like a real vibrant, strong Islamic community, is attend these like conferences.
Yep.
Whether it's, where the Ummah comes together for certain things. Like this weekend, not this weekend, next weekend, Labor Day weekend in New Jersey. Inshallah, I'm gonna go. If anybody wants to hook up and we can go attend and maybe get something to eat or whatever, let me know. Anybody. It's called Tales from the Scripture. And they're gonna be give a lot of speakers throughout the weekend, and let's talk about the agenda. They have Juma on Friday. There's a lunch break. They have the welcome speaker, the depths of despair, remain steadfast, Asa Salat, and here all these different speeches that are going on all weekend, right? That's just day one. Day two, same thing, starting from basically in the morning. Look, addiction to music, addiction to drug, and look at the things that the addiction of pornography. Look at the things that the Ummah is talking about. That a whole weekend of sharing, listening. This is going to be a whole like this. This is what real halaqah are. What a real halaqah is. Getting together and listening and remembering Allah and learning. Right, all weekend long. right? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Who's going to be the speakers? You have
Bilal
Dr. Bilal
Phillips.
Phillips.
Yeah.
That's Mubarak's sheikh, or he's the one that's founded IOU Islam University. Actually accredited Islamic university available in the United States if anybody's interested. Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk, you've probably seen him on YouTube, giving all that beneficial dawah to the Christians. Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid, Sheikh Abu Usama, like Daniel Hakikaju. I don't know this guy. Sheikh Okasha. This is this is Hanif Sheikh. Abu Taymiyyah. He's Ahlul Bayt. He's the brother that met me in Medina. And I don't know these other brothers, but alhamdulillah, great panel. Well-known people that you probably see on YouTube. You can go see them in person, and most likely you'll be able to actually walk up and just go meet these people.
Yep.
Right. This is how you really connect to the Ummah, just being around, and you'll see the love, you'll see the brotherhood. Alhamdulillah, this is just some of the advice we have. If you are in a real dilemma and you're having specific issues, contact us. Like, don't have any shame. Like, listen, I'm going through this and I want to, my situation is XYZ. What do you suggest? We most likely have someone in our group that was in or is in the same exact position that you are in.
Yep.
And they can say, hey, I went through the same thing. This worked for me, or more importantly, this didn't work for me. Right. So you could do that. We have about 14 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, please post them. Let's see.
Let us know.
What do we got?
Nothing so far. One thing I wanted to mention just real quickly was Jaffer mentioned about how you could just like walk up to them, right? And this is important because coming from the Team Jamaat, right? The leaders and those in administration, right? They had to portray this aura of superiority, right? Which you do not see in the major Ummah, right? So if you saw Bilal Phillips at a mosque and he gave a khutbah at Friday, after the khutbah's over, you can go walk to him, talk to him. He can give you a full conversation. When he walks into the masjid for Jummah prayer, I can assure you, he's not saying everyone rise. Like, so that is often when, like, these folks are so, like, it's not even like humbleness, because it's just like a natural thing to just not be arrogant. Because they don't, like, they're knowledgeable, but they're not putting themselves above you. And that's the difference between like the community that we come from and the larger Ummah, is that besides a few folks, and you can tell like they think they're better than you, besides them, the majority of folks there aren't believing in themselves that they're better than you inherently, or like they're above you at all. These folks are willing to talk to you anytime. So don't be afraid to talk to them. Like, they're not gonna like, you scholar of Islam. Like, they're not gonna say it to you. Like, you can go talk to them.
It's funny because Sheikh Uthman, he's out of San Diego, and when me and my wife went to visit San Diego, we went to a seminar where it was Sheikh Uthman, the Sheikh Abu Zaid, the same one on the panel, and Sheikh Okasha. They were doing a seminar in San Diego at Sheikh Uthman's masjid. So right after Sheikh Uthman talked, he's there, and people, he's just, I felt bad going up to him, but I wanted to just introduce myself, shake his hand, because I love the stuff that he's doing. Because you feel bad because everybody's like going up and giving the shakes, and it takes forever for him to get out, But I was like, but alhamdulillah, hey, Assalamu alaikum, where you from? Ask where you're from, show interest. He's like, oh, you're from Binghamton? That's near Syracuse, right? Yeah. He's like, oh, I think I know. So he just strikes up a conversation, connects you with other people that are near your area. Like, this is how it works. And like, even Sheikh Okasha, he was there, and Hanif, knew I was there, and that so he messaged Sheikh Okasha and was like, oh, Sheikh Okasha said, come meet with him. So you want to eat together? I had already left, but look at that. Like, Sheikh Okasha is like trying to, like, out of just the word of one of his companions, like, oh, you got a companion here? Oh, I want to meet him. Where's he at? Same thing with Ustad Abu Taymiyyah. When I was in Medina, Hanif messaged him, because Hanif knows everybody. Hanif, he knows everybody, right? He's like, oh, my friends in Medina, and he found me in Masjid Nabawi, which, if anybody's been there, is huge. He found me, right? Like these are like, this is the real scholars of the Ummah, the real leaders of the Ummah, and this is how you connect. I think we had one statement which I want to actually point out is that one way to reconnect to the Ummah is, depending on what your situation is, remarry into the Ummah.
Yep.
Right. And this is we probably should have had time to talk about this more, but so many times I see people that have left the cult, whether it be through like forced divorce or just regular divorce or whatever the situation may be. They're single, they left the cult, they recognize the falsehood, and then they start pursuing marriage with somebody that's
In the cult.
in the cult.
That's okay. Listen, like this isn't supposed to be a joke, but like that's not the play, right? So I have someone that I'm close with, right? They were engaged to someone in the cult, and they're not in the cult, right? And someone else was like, "Oh, how is this supposed to work? Because like, are you gonna do like the interfaith thing? Because like, their religion is this, your religion is that, so it's not gonna. It's really like a headache you just want to avoid, because you can just avoid it, because there's, again, the Ummah is huge, so there's plenty of other girls out there for you to marry. And like, I don't knock anyone for like marrying people of the book, all right, but like, why would you do that when you can marry someone who's already Muslim? You don't have to deal with like, oh well, my wife is Christian, and so my kids celebrate Christmas, but also they do Eid. Like, just
right,
the hassle you can avoid entirely by just marrying someone Muslim.
Right. Exactly. And like, again, if that is your thing, to pursue someone, like I have my own positions on like that stuff, but if you're pursuing somebody or being pursued by someone that is in the cult or connected to the cult, at least make sure that they have denounced all the anti-Islamic beliefs that most likely takes them outside of the fold of Islam. At least make sure y'all on the same page with that, right? Because that's going to be a big issue. But my personal recommendation, this is not like representing R2F, but just my personal recommendation: stay away. Stay away. Don't even think about it. Do not marry anybody from your cult unless they have at least I'll say publicly denounced all the beliefs and activities and all that has going on, because you're just putting yourself into, like, for instance, I'll give an example. I know a brother, very close to a brother, that when they were in the cult, they married somebody that was outside the cult, that got kicked out the cult, right? So they married the person, brought them into the cult. Then this brother got kicked out the cult, and this person that they brought into the cult left them because they got kicked out the cult, and then said that we can't be together because you're not in the cult. And of course, the response to this was like, I married you when you were in the cult. So just keep your head above water. We have the Ummah. There's so many, whether you're a sister or a brother, even out, if they're listening, the widows of ex-cult leaders, marry someone outside the cult. See what the real world's like. There's so many better people and better opportunities for marriage, that people actually know their deen, more successful in this life and religiously, that you can have a better life and connect with the Ummah by marrying somebody that is actually already connected to the Ummah.
Yep.
So that's a good point.
MashaAllah. I think that's a good point to close it on. And also, we need to do we will do a show, inshallah, in the future on like marriages. Because there is so much stuff that we have to cover. Because there's just marriages, retreats, emasculation of men, like the list goes on. I think we have to cover just to get like the basis of like where we can build upon, because there's a lot of things to unpack coming from the cult, and trying to. This is more just like a summary, or like a spider web of like where we're going to expand upon in actually getting back to the Ummah. So I don't think we have any questions, so I will close this out, inshallah. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Assalamu alaikum.